Okay, welcome to the Baal Shem of Kollel, Israel. Um, so what I want to speak about today is Shavuos. Now, Shavuos, Hashem gave us the Torah. So it's very important to know, we've said this many times, it's very important to note that there's a basic mistake that most people make, and this is what Shavuos kind of corrected, which is that we separate the physical and the spiritual universes. We say, wow, I want to be spiritual, I have to leave this world. And that's why if you look at the other religions, the more spiritual you are, the more divorced you are from this world, right? And the whole Eastern philosophy is kind of really terrible because it's all about divorcing themselves from reality. And if you're really a good boy, then you don't come back into this world. If you're bad, you actually get reincarnated as a woman. Did you know that? But if you're really good, you don't even have to come back. You get to be like, wow, you get to be just like stuck in heaven, no more issues forever. So there's obviously, all of this comes from a negative perception of our physical world, whether it's the false perception of Buddhism that says everybody suffers. As you know, in America, sometimes the problem is people don't suffer enough. They don't know what to do with themselves. The other issue is that there's a basic idea that if something is pleasurable, it must be a sin. So the answer, and this is what I want to discuss, is that pleasure does not necessarily mean a sin. Something that's holy is also pleasurable. The question is not is something pleasurable or not. The question is, so they kind of associate pleasure, like Catholicism a little bit did this. They associate pleasure with flesh, with my desire, and they separate that from God. And so therefore they say that it must be ungodly. But there's something called godly pleasure. God must take pleasure because pleasure is the primary reason why anyone does anything. If God didn't have a pleasure from us, he wouldn't have created us. You only do something when it gives you a pleasure. So it must be that God receives pleasure from us. The fact that Alter Rebbe says that just like a meal, you don't go to a meal and say, I'm serving my guests chicken, just chicken, or just cupcakes because it tastes good. Oh, you have a whole meal. You have a lot of different things that you're offering. Hashem has many pleasures. There are many things that we do that give him pleasure. You have friendship, you have kindness, learning of Torah. There are a lot of things that you do, right? 613 pleasures that God gets. So all of this comes to teach us a very important thing in life. And that is that it's okay to have spiritual pleasure. And in fact, you should have spiritual pleasure. The thing is, you just have to kind of understand what is good pleasure and what is bad pleasure. Because if you understand that, you're okay. It's only when the animal soul seeks pleasure, and it's basically, as long as it gives me pleasure, I want it. Now, it's an interesting thing because if we didn't seek pleasure, we wouldn't even become religious in the first place. Because what makes a person religious? Either you are seeking something deeper in your life, or even the opposite of pleasure is pain. You don't want pain. You don't want existential pain. So you could say it goes a little deeper, that a person is seeking truth. But on a certain level, sometimes the discomfort of living a life that doesn't make any sense. Because the brain also seeks pleasure. Pleasure for the brain is that things make sense. It adds up, right? That's why something that adds up, and you see the whole picture is very beautiful. Some different forms of pleasure. So the point is that a person, it's very interesting. I was very surprised when I saw it. But Reb Saadia Gaon says it, and the Baal Shem Tov says it, and things that Baal Shem Tov quotes from Saadia Gaon, they say with the reincarnation of Saadia Gaon, is that in life you should take pleasure. You should enjoy yourself in life. Because if you can't take pleasure in the physical, you can't transform that to the spiritual. A human being that's born isn't born with a sense of spiritual pleasure. Maybe a little bit the children of today, they're on a very high level. But certainly, the way I was born, your pleasures are physical. Okay, you have ideals, spiritual ideals more. It's more intellectual, but your physical pleasures are physical. So you have to be able to enjoy this world and then be able to say, okay, I want my enjoyment to come from spiritual pleasure. And this very much relates to Shavuos because it says, excuse me, it says that everybody agrees that the Torah, Shavuos is a time of physical pleasure. Quite simply, you have cheesecake, no greater pleasure than cheesecake. We know that our world, the Torah, Israel was given a blessing of milk and honey. Now, what's the honey of Israel? Date honey. If you want a good pleasure, mix date honey and milk. It's an amazing mix. It tastes amazing. So Hashem literally gave us a lot of pleasures. Why do we have these pleasures? To enjoy them in a holy way, in a kosher way. The Torah wasn't given so we should become separate from this world, even on a physical, on a mundane, on a pleasurable way. Torah was given to make us an Am Kodesh, a holy nation. It wasn't saying to make us into angels that don't enjoy, cheesecake. It was saying to make us into people that have a kosher cheesecake and do it with friends. They say, what's the difference between a Jew who drinks and a drunk? A Jew who drinks says l'chaim to someone else. So the drunk, his pleasure is overcoming his pain. And this is why, in fact, there's a lot of anti-Semitism in the world, because there are a lot of miserable people. Really, that's what it is. People that are happy with themselves are not anti-Semitic. People that are anti-Semitic, they are basically miserable people. It's very simple. Unfortunately, there was a shooting in the Kansas City Jewish Community Center. The guy didn't shoot Jews, but be that as it may, but because it was Kansas City, like, we knew people that knew the person, like, I was like, wasn't that? And yeah, he was a messed up guy. He was just, wasn't a healthy human being. Unfortunately, it can get to a worse situation where people, I think the worst type of anti-Semitism in a certain sense is like Nazism. Why? Because you take normal people and you convince them, even it's now going on with the left, the anti-Israel, even Jews, convince them that the enemy, or so to say, the enemy is bad. So this gives you the right to murder them. So it's like they don't even have hate. They just have a false belief system. That's very, very, very dangerous. But unfortunately, the Arabs have both. Because on one hand, they have this ancient, from the times of Yishmael, this ancient hatred. But then they have an education, so it depends. Because there are many that are Christian that are quite supportive, right? They're Jews, different types. But be that as it may, the basically anti-Semitism is, with Arab anti-Semitism, a mixture between both the ancient jealousy as well as Islam. So that's but somewhat that's going down, because after the Arab Spring, they realize that they're their own worst enemy. So that humility, because again, to hate someone else, a person has to have arrogance. You have to, it's one of the 10 Commandments, it says not to be jealous. So you can ask yourself a question, but jealousy is a normal human behavior. So how can you tell someone not to be jealous? So it's only normal if you can expect to have what the other person has. So for example, the example that's brought down, the person wouldn't be jealous it says don't be jealous of your friend's wife. Why doesn't it say don't be jealous of, the king's wife? Because you would never imagine that you could marry a queen. You're not a prince. Who are you? So the same thing is, whatever anyone else has, don't imagine that you can have it, because that was theirs. Everybody is a little king in their own reality. Hashem gives everybody their little kingdom, and nobody can take what belongs to others. I remember learning in the Gemara that if somebody's kind of jealous of the good that someone else has, then they can lose. Hashem can take away the good that they have. Because Hashem wants you to have good. He wants them to have good. Everybody should have their wife and their family and their money and whatever it is. Everyone should have it good. Should be good. So, in conclusion, how are we going to have, this should be a bracha, that the world should be good. The Rebbe speaks about this idea that Hashem didn't want kino in Ma'aser Bereishis. Hashem didn't want any jealousy in the world. And so, what did he do? He created that everyone and everything in the world has something special to offer. So the sun can't be jealous of the moon because the sun and the moon do different things. The sun shines during the day and the moon shines during the night. And a man can't be jealous of a woman and a woman can't be jealous of a man because they do different things, and people can say whatever they say. It doesn't matter because a man and a woman are not only physically different, they're biologically different, and they're also in brain differences. And the thing that make a person the most themselves is their brain. So a man and a woman have different brains. They think differently. They perceive differently. You're a teacher. I'm sure you see that from a very young age. Boys and girls behave differently. And it's not a cultural thing. It's a brain thing. Because brains are like an energy, the life force. You know, if you have, I don't know, you have, this has energy and the car has energy, but they're going to do different things because they have different bodies, and their different bodies produce different results. And so you can't make this stuff up because it's just the way that things are. And so why did Hashem do it? And if a woman is jealous of a man, she won't be a woman. She won't fulfill her role in this world. And if a man is jealous of a woman, he won't be a man. He won't fulfill his role. But a man can say it. And if, likewise, if a Jew is jealous of a non-Jew, or however you do it, we all have what we're meant to do in this world. One of the, there was a guy, he actually toured with the Rolling Stones. Interesting guy. He came to the Rebbe. Long story short, he asked the Rebbe, I mentioned the story before, he asked the Rebbe in Yiddish. He grew up religious, and he laughed because who is God? Where's the Eibishter? So the Rebbe said, like, everywhere. He said, Abavu, but where? So the Rebbe said to him, by dear hearts are just of us defects, by you and your own heart, if this is what you're asking. And that was amazing to him. The Rebbe said, Hashem is in the stone, he's in everything. So then he said, but Rebbe, this is something that perplexes Jews, because a lot of the Jews don't like the idea we're chosen people. We're like, whoa, everybody's special. What about everybody? You know, the Rebbe says the black has to be the best black, the Indian has to be the best Indian, and the Jew has to be the best Jew. It's a very true thing, because Hashem made us all in our unique tribe, if you want to call it, in our unique family. And we all have something special. And you have to be the best you, right? We all know the famous thing. Zusha Vanapali said, when I get to heaven, they won't ask, why weren't you like Moses? Because I'm not Moses. Why weren't you like Aaron? Because I'm not Aaron. They'll say, why weren't you Zusha? Because Zusha, there's only one Zusha. There's only one you. So we all have an obligation to be the best us. And that's a very important thing to know, that there is no other you. The Rebbe says the person can never say, oh, you know, I've got a great idea, somebody else will do it. No, Hashem gave you that idea because he wants you to do that idea. That's your skill set. And nobody else is allowed to do your idea, because then there'd be jealousy because you don't have a purpose in this world. So in fact, we have to take responsibility for the parts of the world that we see that we can help, because only we can do it. Very often in life, when you see a problem, there's no one else in the world that's going to solve that problem but you. And if you don't do it, the problem won't get solved. It's just that simple. And so people like to think, oh, wow, you know, somebody else is going to take care of it. Well, if you look at human history, usually no one takes care of problems. There's a guy, very interesting, he gave a lecture, it was like an author, this and that. He said that, you know, people often like to think there's a conspiracy. You know, people are interesting people. They like to, I think the reason people like to think they're conspiracies is it takes away responsibility. Somebody else is in charge. we have all these philosophies, crazy stuff. But the truth of the matter is that in the end of the day, this guy was saying it would be really good if there was a conspiracy. The problem is there isn't a conspiracy. It's like a big boat with 7 billion people and nobody's driving it. Right. That's really what's happening in the world, right? You look at the leaders, we say before Mashiach comes, we'll say, there's no one to rely on but Hashem. It's true. You look at the world today, give me one leader. I mean, Netanyahu is a decent leader, but he's quite limited. There's not a single leader that you can look at in the world today that you can say, this guy is a leader. This guy knows what he's doing. No one. It's an amazing thing. Billions of people.
A very special from the web.
Yeah, Netanyahu does have a bracha. It's true. If Netanyahu is a little successful, it's because he's a leader of the Jewish people. Hashem's giving him a blessing. No question about it. And he has done a lot of good. To his credit, he's done a lot of good. But even so, he's not perfect, that's for sure. Nobody's going to call him the Messiah. And I would say around the world, there's like, you look at all the countries, even people you were hoping were a good leader, like Putin maybe was like, doing something very crazy, China. Yeah, just like stupid things. I mean, they probably released the COVID virus, and even what it didn't have, their own economy, I think, is suffering terribly just from their own policies. So it's like people, they're not really sacrificing themselves for their people. You don't see, like, in the olden days, there were more like really great leaders. But today, I can't think of any leader around the world. I mean, the closest you would say is maybe Netanyahu, and that you would say is blessing from Hashem because he's in Israel. I don't know if he himself really could achieve what he. Yeah, there were, right. There were people like Gandhi that were very selfless, that really cared about the people. Really were selfless people, very great people. They gave up a lot for the people. But, I lived in Africa, so, I mean, they're a bunch of, they're a bunch of thieves. That's what they are. Every single one of these guys, they took over. I mean, apart from Nelson Mandela, who was decent, the rest of them, that's all they are. They're multi-million thieves. They come into the government and steal as much as they can. That's all it is. That's why Russia lost this war, because everybody is a crook. Everybody takes a government contract. They take 50% of the money for themselves. They create a tank that can't move. It's a bunch of, that's all it is. And so, and it's systemic. So all these countries, they're all like that. And in the West now, also we've gotten to a point where people are lazy. Anyway, it is what it is. So what's the point? The point is that every person has to take as much goodness, because really every person contains the universe. So if each and every one of us said, okay, we're feeding around the table, so that's it. We're gonna, for now on, okay, I can't change the world, but I could change my world. I can from now on do the will of Hashem forever. So that can bring Mashiach. That's what we're gonna do. Got it? Okay, resolution, will of Hashem forever. Will of Hashem forever. There you go. Mashiach now. Tell you.